The warning came on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Every screen across the Sol system lit up with the same message. Every radio frequency carried the same words. Every device capable of receiving a signal suddenly displayed an image of a massive ship, dark and angular, floating in the black space beyond Neptune. Admiral One stood on the bridge of the TFS Indomitable, watching the transmission with calm eyes. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, their faces showing concern but not panic. They had trained for this moment. Humanity had known for 5 years that someone was coming. The alien on the screen was tall and broad, covered in dark scales that reflected the light like polished metal. 4 arms crossed over a chest decorated with medals and symbols of rank. Yellow eyes stared out from a face that resembled something between a lizard and a warrior from ancient Earth legends. When it spoke, the translation software rendered its words into every human language simultaneously. "Primitive species of Sol 3, the alien said. Its voice was deep and commanding. "I am Overlord X, Supreme Commander of the Grand Armada. You exist in space claimed by the Galactic Empire. By the ancient laws of conquest, your system now belongs to us." One leaned back in his command chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Next to him, Captain noticed the expression. She had served under One for 3 years and knew that smile. It was not the smile of a worried man. "You have 1 standard cycle to respond," X continued. "Surrender your world. Submit to Imperial rule. Your people will be absorbed into the Empire as a tributary species. You will serve. You will obey. You will prosper under our protection. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why 43 species before you chose submission over extinction." The transmission ended. The screens went dark. Across the bridge, officers turned to look at their admiral, waiting for orders. One sat quietly for a moment, then touched the communication panel on his chair. "All ships, this is Admiral One. Maintain current positions. Battle stations but hold fire. Repeat, hold fire until I give direct orders." He switched to a different channel. "Earth Command, this is Indomitable. I assume you received that." A woman's voice came through, calm and clear. "We did, Admiral. The Council is meeting now. Stand by for instructions." One nodded, though she could not see him. He looked at, "What do you think?" Study the tactical display showing the enemy fleet. 3,000 ships, ranging from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts. The lead ship was enormous, 5 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons. "They're confident," she said. "Look at their formation. They're not even trying to be defensive. They think we're no threat at all." "Because we look small," one said. The Terran defense fleet numbered only 200 ships spread across the solar system. Compared to the Armada, they seemed insignificant. "They see our numbers and think we're primitives playing with toys we don't understand." On Earth, in the Pacific Defense Command Center, Commander watched the same tactical displays. The civilian communication networks were buzzing with activity, but there was no panic. People were worried, yes, concerned, but not terrified. The government had prepared them well. "Should we begin evacuations?" an aide asked. Shook her head. "No, that would take weeks and accomplish nothing. Besides, we won't need to evacuate." The aide looked uncertain. "Commander, they have 3,000 warships. We have 200, the numbers." "The numbers don't tell the whole story," said. "Trust the fleet. Trust the Admiral. Trust what we've built." Back on the Indomitable, the communication panel chimed. One accepted the connection. "Admiral, this is Earth Command. The Council has decided. You are authorized to respond to the ultimatum as you see fit. Make our position clear." "Understood," one said. He closed the channel and opened a new one, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Fleet, this is Admiral One of the Terran Defense Force. We have received your ultimatum. Our response is as follows. We decline your offer of submission. We reject your claim to our system. We strongly suggest you reconsider your intended attack. For your own sake, turn around and leave peacefully." He paused, then added, "You have been warned." The response came quickly. X's face appeared on the screens again, his yellow eyes wide with what might have been surprise or anger. "You dare refuse? You, with your handful of ships against the might of the Empire? You must be either brave or foolish. I suspect foolish." "Perhaps," one said, his smile growing slightly, "or perhaps we know something you don't." "Empty words from a dead species," X snarled. "You had your chance. Now you will see why the Empire has never lost a war in 3,000 years of conquest. Prepare to witness your world burn." The transmission cut off. On the tactical display, the fleet began to move, advancing in perfect formation toward the inner solar system. 3,000 ships, weapons charging, shields glowing with power. One watched them come. Around him, his crew worked with calm efficiency. Weapon systems came online. Defensive fields activated. The Indomitable and its sister ships took up positions, small and seemingly insignificant against the approaching tide. "Admiral," said quietly, "they really think they're going to win, don't they?" "Yes," one said. "They've conquered 43 species. They've never faced serious resistance. They see a small fleet and a single planet and they think victory is certain." He leaned forward in his chair, watching the enemy advance. "They don't know that humanity has spent 200 years preparing for war. They don't know what we've built. They don't know what we're capable of." "Should we show them?" asked. "Not yet," one said. "Let them commit fully. Let them think they have the advantage. It's more merciful that way. When they realize the truth, at least they won't die wondering what might have been." The fleet continued its approach, confident and overwhelming. Behind Neptune, hidden in the shadow of the ice giant's rings, additional Terran ships waited. Around Jupiter, defense platforms powered up silently. Near Mars, the second squadron prepared for combat. And on Earth itself, billions of people watched the skies and waited. The wait would not be long. In less than an hour, the fleet would be in weapons range. In less than an hour, they would fire their first shots. And in less than an hour, they would discover that humanity was not like the other 43 species they had conquered. Humanity had been at war with itself for thousands of years. The weapons they had built, the strategies they had developed, the technologies they had perfected, all of it had been created to fight other humans. Against an external enemy, especially one that had grown lazy through easy victories, those weapons would be devastating. One touched his communication panel one last time. "All ships, final check. Sound off when ready." One by one, the ship captains reported in. Every system green, every weapon ready, every crew member at their station. "Good," one said. "Remember your training, remember what we're fighting for, and remember that the enemy doesn't know what's coming. Let's keep it that way as long as possible." He settled back in his chair and watched the enemy approach. The smile never left his face. It was the smile of a man who held a secret, a truth that would soon be revealed in fire and fury, and the shocked silence of a galactic empire that had finally met its match. The fleet came on, proud and powerful and utterly unprepared for what awaited them in the darkness of humanity's home system. The fleet moved through space like a wall of steel and fire. 3,000 warships in perfect formation, each one bristling with weapons that had conquered worlds. Their shields glowed with energy, creating a barrier that no known weapon could penetrate. At least, no weapon they knew about. On the bridge of his flagship, Overlord X watched the human fleet with contempt. 200 ships, tiny things compared to his dreadnoughts. They held their position near Earth's moon, not advancing, not retreating, just waiting. "They're going to run," his tactical officer said. "Once we're in range, they'll scatter, they always do." X nodded. He had seen it before. Primitive species that talked boldly until they saw the full might of the Empire. Then they either surrendered or died. It made no difference to him which choice they made. "Weapons range in 10 minutes, the tactical officer announced. "All ships prepare to fire on my command," X ordered. Target their military vessels first. Once they're destroyed, we'll deal with the planet. On Earth, in the Pacific Defense Command Center, Commander watched the countdown. Around her, officers monitored thousands of data streams. The fleet was advancing exactly as predicted. Their formation, their speed, their tactics, everything matched the intelligence reports that Terran scouts had gathered over the past 5 years. "They fight the same way every time," said to her second-in-command. "Same formation, same approach, same weapons. They haven't changed their tactics in centuries because they've never needed to." "Will our defenses hold?" the officer asked. Smiled. It was the same small smile that Admiral One wore. "Hold. Lieutenant, our defenses are going to do much more than hold." Above the moon, Admiral One watched the enemy close the distance. His crew was silent, focused, ready. Every person on the bridge knew their job. They had practiced this scenario 100 times in simulation. Now it was real. "Incoming fire," the tactical officer called out. The fleet opened fire at maximum range. Energy beams, bright enough to light up the darkness of space, lanced forward. Each beam carried enough power to vaporize a mountain. Dozens of beams, then hundreds, all targeted at the Terran fleet. And then something impossible happened. The beams curved. Like water flowing around a stone, the energy weapons bent away from the Terran ships. They passed harmlessly into empty space, dissipating without hitting anything. On the flagship, X stared at his displays in confusion. "What happened? Why didn't we hit them?" "Unknown, Overlord," the tactical officer said, his clawed hands dancing over his controls. "The weapons fired correctly. The targeting was perfect, but something bent our shots away." "That's impossible," X said. "Recalibrate and fire again, full barrage." The fleet fired again. This time, every ship unleashed its full arsenal. The space between the two fleets became a storm of energy. Missiles added their trails to the light show. Kinetic rounds, moving at a fraction of light speed, joined the attack. All of it missed. Every shot, every missile, every round curved away from the Terran ships. Some weapons came within meters of their targets before being deflected. Others veered off at greater distances, but none hit. "They're bending space itself," the tactical officer whispered. "The gravity fields around their ships. They're not natural. They're being manipulated, but the power requirements for that would be—" "Impossible," X finished. He stared at the small human fleet which had not moved, had not fired back, had simply stood and let the Empire's weapons fail against them. "Fire everything, all weapons, now." The order went out across 3,000 ships. The Armada unleashed enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Energy beams crisscrossed space. Missiles filled the void. The light was so bright that people on Earth's night side could see it, a false dawn in the sky. When the light finally faded, the Terran fleet remained. Not a single ship damaged, not a single shield flickering. They hung in space as if nothing had happened. On the Indomitable, Captain checked her displays. No hits, all ships reporting green status. "Good," one said. "Minu, are you ready?" Lieutenant Minu sat at the weapons console, his hands steady on the controls. "Ready, sir." "Then let's show them what humanity can do," one said. "Fire the eraser." Minu pressed a single button. There was no flash of light, no beam of energy, no visible sign that anything had happened. One moment, 100 warships were there. The next moment, they were gone. Not destroyed, not exploded into debris, simply gone, erased from existence as if they had never been. The fleet stopped advancing. On every bridge, every tactical display showed the same impossible thing. 100 ships just gone, no wreckage, no energy signatures, no trace that they had ever existed. "What was that?" X demanded. "What weapon was that?" No one on his bridge could answer. They had never seen anything like it. Their shields hadn't even registered an attack. The ships were just gone. Overlord receiving communication from the human fleet, the communications officer said, her voice shaking. Put it through, X ordered. Admiral One's face appeared on the screen. He was still sitting calmly in his chair, still wearing that slight smile. Overlord X, this is your second warning. Leave now. This doesn't have to continue. What did you do? X asked. What was that weapon? Proof that you don't know who you're fighting, One said. You thought we were primitives. You thought we had no defenses. You were wrong. You still are. Leave now while most of your fleet survives. X felt something he had not felt in decades, uncertainty. Then anger pushed it aside. He had conquered 43 species. He had never lost a battle. He would not start now, especially not to a species that had barely left its own planet. Never, he snarled. The Empire does not retreat. We do not surrender. If you have powerful weapons, then we will show you what true power looks like. All ships advance, close to direct combat range. Find out how well their defenses work when we're right on top of them. The fleet surged forward, 3,000 ships minus the 100 that had been erased. They accelerated, closing the distance rapidly. If the humans had weapons that worked at long range, they would get close enough that range didn't matter. On Earth, Commander watched the enemy advance. They're not retreating. No, her aide said. They're getting closer. They're going to ram us if they have to. They won't get the chance, said. She opened a channel to the Second Fleet stationed near Mars. Captain, the Admiral is going to need support. Are you ready? On the bridge of her ship near Mars, Captain smiled. She was younger than One, but she had fought in the outer system conflicts, the wars between Earth and the colony stations. She knew combat in a way that with their easy victories, could not imagine. We're ready, said. Let them come. The fleet crossed the halfway point. They were now close enough that their weapons would be more difficult for the Terrans to deflect, close enough that sheer numbers and firepower would overwhelm any defense. That's when the sensors detected something new. Thousands of small contacts moving fast coming from every direction. Not ships, too small for ships. Fighters. No, smaller than that. The contacts moved with impossible precision, turning in formations that no biological pilot could survive. Drones, the tactical officer said. They're deploying drones. How many? X asked. The officer checked his display, then checked again. Overlord, I'm reading over 300,000 individual contacts, and they're all targeting our ships. X felt his blood run cold. 300,000 drones against 3,000 ships should not be a problem. Each of his ships could destroy hundreds of drones. But something about the way they moved, the perfect coordination, the absolute precision of their formations. All fighters launch, he ordered. Defensive positions, shoot down those drones. The Crimson Guard, the elite fighter corps of the Empire, launched from their carriers. 50,000 fighters, each piloted by an enhanced warrior with cybernetic implants that made them faster and deadlier than any normal pilot. They flew out to meet the drone swarm, confident in their training and their technology. They had fought the best pilots of 43 species. A bunch of automated drones would be easy prey. The battle lasted 4 minutes. The fighters couldn't hit the drones. Every shot they fired missed by centimeters as the drones shifted positions. The drones moved in perfect coordination, each one responding to the others in real time. When a pilot fired, 3 drones had already moved to where his sensors said they would be in 1 second, while the actual targets had shifted elsewhere. But the drones never missed. Their weapons, small but precise, found weak points in fighter shields. They targeted engines, weapons, cockpits. One by one, the Crimson Guard fell. 4 minutes after the battle started, it was over. 50,000 elite fighters destroyed. The few survivors who managed to eject and be recovered were in shock, unable to explain what had happened. The drone swarm reformed and began advancing on the main fleet. X stared at his displays, watching his proud fighters destroyed in minutes. He looked at the small human fleet, still waiting calmly. He looked at the drones approaching, moving with mechanical perfection. And for the first time in his long military career, Overlord X felt fear. Overlord X stood on his bridge, watching the drone swarm approach. His finest pilots were gone. His weapons couldn't hit the enemy. 100 of his ships had been erased from existence. Every tactical advantage he had relied on for decades meant nothing here. But the Empire had never lost, never surrendered, never retreated. To do so now would shame not just him, but 3,000 years of conquest. Communications, send a priority message to Central Command, X ordered. Tell them we need the Executor fleet, immediately. His communications officer looked up, eyes wide. Overlord, the Executor fleet has only been deployed 3 times in Imperial history. Are you certain? Do you see what's happening out there? X gestured at the displays showing the approaching drones. These humans are not primitives, they're something else, something dangerous. We need the Empire's ultimate weapons. The message was sent. Deep in Imperial space, hundreds of light years away, the Executor fleet received the call. Ships that could crack planets, weapons that could ignite atmospheres, technology so powerful, so terrible, that the Empire kept it in reserve for only the most desperate situations. They would arrive in 3 days. On Earth, in a small laboratory deep beneath the Pacific Defense Command Center, Engineer monitored the battle through dozens of data screens. Around him, other engineers and scientists worked at their stations, tracking every weapon fired, every defense engaged, every system performing exactly as designed. The gravitational deflection fields are working perfectly, one scientist reported. Their weapons can't get through. The spatial curvature is too strong. The eraser performed as expected, another engineer said. Clean deletion, no residual signatures. They have no idea how we did it. Nodded, making notes, and the drones. Better than simulation, a young woman at a console said, her eyes bright with excitement. The quantum-entangled AI network is processing combat data in real time. Response time is measured in nanoseconds. The pilots never had a chance. How much of our capacity did we use? Asked. 30%, she replied. Smiled, just like Admiral One, just like Commander, just like every human who knew what their species had built. Good. Let's keep the rest in reserve. I suspect we'll need it. Above, in space near Earth's moon, the drone swarm reached the fleet. The Empire's warships opened fire with every point defense weapon they had. Thousands of small turrets tracking thousands of tiny targets. It should have been enough. It wasn't. The drones moved like schools of fish, flowing around the defensive fire. When one was destroyed, 3 others adjusted their patterns to compensate. They worked together, thinking together. A single distributed intelligence spread across 300,000 mechanical bodies. They began targeting the ship's shield generators, small weapons precisely placed, overwhelming the shields one section at a time. Once a shield was down, larger drones moved in with heavier weapons. Engines exploded. Weapons arrays went dark. Ship after ship lost power and drifted helplessly. Pull back, X ordered. All ships retreat to the outer system. We'll regroup and wait for the Executor fleet. The Armada began its withdrawal. It was not a rout, not yet, but it was close. Ships that had advanced in perfect formation now scattered, trying to put distance between themselves and the relentless drones. Admiral One watched them go. Recall the drones, he ordered. Let them retreat. No need to push our advantage too hard, not yet. The drones broke off their attack and returned to their carrier ships. The fleet continued its withdrawal, moving beyond Mars, beyond the asteroid belt, out to where Jupiter's massive gravity well dominated the outer solar system. Captain looked at One. They're calling for reinforcements. Our scouts detected a faster-than-light communication burst 3 hours ago. I know, one said. Let them bring reinforcements, it changes nothing. Sir, if they bring their full military might. Then we'll destroy it, one said simply. Do you know why I'm not worried? She shook her head. Because for 200 years, humanity has been preparing to fight itself, one said. Every weapon we've shown them, we built to use against other humans. The eraser. We developed that during the corporate wars when Earth-based companies and Mars colonies were fighting for control of the asteroid belt. The gravitational deflection. That came from research into protecting habitats from collision. The drones. We built those because human pilots kept dying in battles between stations. He gestured at the displays. Everything they've seen, every technology we've demonstrated was created because we were terrified of each other. We spent 2 centuries in an arms race with ourselves, and now they want to bring more ships, he smiled. Let them. They're bringing more targets, nothing more. On the flagship now stationed near Jupiter, X received updates from his fleet. Losses, 170 ships destroyed or disabled. Casualties, hundreds of thousands. Morale, shattered. And they hadn't even damaged a single human vessel. The Executor fleet will arrive in 2 days, his tactical officer said. Should we engage the humans before then? No, X said. We wait. We let the humans think they've won. Then we show them what real power looks like. 2 days passed. On Earth, life continued almost normally. People went to work, children went to school, families gathered for meals. News broadcasts showed images of the fleet staying beyond Jupiter, waiting. Everyone knew reinforcements were coming. No one seemed particularly worried. In the Pacific Defense Command Center, Commander reviewed intelligence reports. The Executor fleet is big, 30 dreadnoughts, each one twice the size of anything we've seen so far, plus support ships, carriers, and something else. What else? Her aide asked. They're calling it said, a mobile fortress built around a quantum singularity bomb. Apparently, it can turn stars into black holes. The aide's face went pale. That's insane. Why would anyone build something like that? Because they could, said. Because they wanted the ultimate weapon, something so terrible that just threatening to use it would make entire species surrender. Will it work against us? Smiled, only if they get a chance to use it, which they won't. The Executor fleet arrived on schedule. 30 massive dreadnoughts, each one bristling with weapons that could shatter moons. Around them, hundreds of smaller ships formed a protective screen. And at the center of the formation, a sphere of dark metal 10 kilometers in diameter, with a power signature so strong that Earth sensors could detect it from beyond Jupiter. On the bridge of the Executor flagship, Grand Admiral Han reviewed the tactical situation. He was old, even for and had commanded the Executor fleet twice before. Both times, the enemy had surrendered before he needed to fire He expected the same here. Overlord X has provided data on the human weapons, his tactical officer said. They have some kind of spatial manipulation technology, gravitational fields that deflect energy weapons, some kind of matter deletion weapon, and very sophisticated automated combat systems. Impressive for primitives, Han said, but ultimately meaningless. That doesn't fire energy beams that can be deflected. It doesn't use matter that can be deleted. It manipulates spacetime itself, creating a quantum singularity. Nothing can deflect that. Nothing can survive it. He opened a channel to the human fleet. This is Grand Admiral Han of the Executor fleet. You have fought well. You have shown courage and ingenuity. But this ends now. Surrender and your world will be spared. Resist and we will collapse your sun into a black hole. You have 1 hour to decide. On the indomitable, Admiral 1 listened to the ultimatum. Then he looked at Captain. What do you think? Should we be scared? Checked her tactical displays. The is impressive. If it works as advertised, it's definitely dangerous. If it gets a chance to fire, one added. Yes, sir, if it gets a chance to fire. One opened a channel back to the fleet. Grand Admiral, this is Admiral One. We appreciate the hour you've given us, but we don't need it. Our answer is the same as before. No, we will not surrender. We suggest you reconsider your attack. This is your final warning. Hand's scaled face twisted in anger. You refuse, even facing you must be insane. Perhaps, one said, or perhaps we know something you don't. You're about to find out which. The channel closed. Hand turned to his weapons officer. Prepare target the human sun. We'll give them one more chance to watch us charge the weapon. When they see what we're about to do, they'll surrender. They began to power up. Deep inside the sphere, magnetic fields constrained a tiny quantum singularity, holding it stable. When fired, the singularity would be released in a beam toward the sun. Once it reached the star, it would begin consuming matter, growing larger, eventually collapsing the entire star into a black hole. The process would take weeks, but it would be unstoppable. Or it would have been, if the Terran Defense Force had been using normal technology. Engineer, deep beneath Pacific Defense Command, watched his monitors as the charged. They're really going to do it, he said. They're going to try to collapse our sun. Should we stop them now? A colleague asked. No, said. Let them commit fully. The Admiral wants them to understand just how outmatched they are. Let them think they're about to win. Then we'll show them the truth. The reached full charge. Its power signature was so strong that every sensor in the solar system detected it. On Earth, people looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere out beyond Jupiter, an alien weapon was about to fire at their sun. But no one panicked. They had faith in their defenders. They had faith in what humanity had built. Grand Admiral Han gave the order, fire. The fired, and for a moment space itself seemed to scream. A beam of twisted spacetime lanced out from the massive sphere, carrying its deadly cargo toward the sun. Inside that beam, a quantum singularity barely larger than an atom raced forward at near-light speed. When it reached the sun, it would begin to consume the star from within, unstoppable and inevitable. Grand Admiral Han watched the beam race toward its target. In his long career, he had never needed to fire the threat alone had always been enough. But these humans had pushed too far, refused too many warnings. Now they would learn what happened to species who the Empire. Impact in 47 seconds, his weapons officer announced. On Earth, in the underground laboratory, Engineer watched the same countdown. His fingers moved across his console, calm and precise. Activating the web, he said. Across the solar system, devices that had been positioned carefully over the past 5 years came online. They were small things, each one no larger than a satellite, hidden among asteroids and orbiting bodies. Alone, each device was powerful but limited. Together, they formed a network that could manipulate spacetime on a scale they had never imagined. The beam from the reached Earth's orbital distance. It should have continued straight to the sun. Instead, it curved, not like light bending around gravity, but sharply at an impossible angle. The beam, the singularity inside it, everything twisted sideways and vanished. On the flagship, every alarm went off at once. What happened? Han demanded. Where did the weapon go? Unknown, Admiral, the tactical officer said, his clawed hands shaking as he worked his console. The beam just disappeared. The singularity is gone. We can't detect it anywhere. That's impossible, Han roared. Nothing can nothing can redirect a quantum singularity. On the Indomitable, Admiral One opened a channel to the fleet. His smile was wider now, less amused and more satisfied. Grand Admiral, this is Admiral One. Your weapon has been neutralized. We tried to warn you. We tried to give you chances to leave peacefully. Now you'll understand what humanity is truly capable of. What did you do? Han demanded. Where is our weapon? Somewhere else, one said. Sometime else. We've spent 200 years studying spacetime, Grand Admiral. We know how to bend it, twist it, and fold it. Your singularity is now in a pocket dimension, a bubble universe that exists alongside our own but separated by a dimensional membrane. It's perfectly safe there. No danger to anyone." He paused, then added, "But your fleet is not safe. Not anymore. You've had multiple warnings. Now you'll see what happens to those who threaten humanity's home." The channel closed. Han stared at his displays, trying to process what he had just heard. Pocket dimensions. Bubble universes. These were theoretical concepts, ideas that the Empire's greatest scientists said were impossible. Yet the humans spoke of them casually, as if they were simple tools. "All ships prepare for combat," Han ordered. "If we can't destroy their sun, we'll destroy their ships. All weapons full power, target the human fleet." The Executor fleet opened fire. 30 dreadnoughts, each one carrying weapons that had cracked planets. Energy beams powerful enough to boil oceans. Missiles with warheads that could destroy cities. All of it launched at once, a devastating barrage that should have overwhelmed any defense. The weapons curved away, just like before. The gravitational deflection fields protected the Terran ships perfectly. Not a single shot landed. "Damn their shields," Han said. "All ships advance. We'll close to point-blank range and fire directly at them. See if their gravity fields can deflect that." The Executor fleet began to move forward. That's when Captain, commanding the 2nd Squadron near Mars, received her orders from Admiral 1. "Captain, you're authorized to engage." One's voice came through her communicator. "Show them what the outer system conflicts taught us." Smiled. The outer system conflicts had been brutal affairs, wars fought between Earth's forces and the independent colonies around Jupiter and Saturn. Battles where quarter was neither given nor expected. Humanity had developed some of its most terrifying weapons during those dark years. "All ships activate the entropy accelerators," ordered. Her fleet, 50 ships strong, powered up weapons that the Terran Defense Council had debated about using at all. The entropy accelerators didn't destroy matter. They didn't delete it from existence. Instead, they dramatically sped up the natural decay of all matter they touched. Metal aged centuries in seconds. Organic material turned to dust. Energy shields collapsed as their generators failed from sudden metal fatigue. The 2nd Squadron fired. Invisible beams reached across space and touched 10 dreadnoughts. The effects were immediate and horrifying. The outer hulls of the massive ships began to corrode, metal turning brittle and crumbling. Internal systems failed as centuries of wear happened in moments. Crew members felt their bodies aging, though the effect on organic matter was less severe than on metals and electronics. The 10 ships went dark, drifting hulks that had aged into uselessness in less than a minute. What is that weapon?" Han whispered, watching his dreadnoughts die in a way he had never seen before. On Earth, in a secure government facility, General watched the battle alongside the Terran Defense Council. The council members were men and women elected to make the hardest decisions humanity could face. They had authorized the use of weapons that had been sealed away after the outer system conflicts ended. "The entropy accelerators are working," one council member said. "Should we authorize the others?" "Not yet," said. "We're still being relatively merciful. If they continue to fight, we'll show them the weapons we truly feared." The fleet was in chaos now. Ships trying to advance, trying to retreat, trying to understand what was happening. They had lost nearly half their forces, and they hadn't touched a single human ship. "We have to retreat," the tactical officer on Han's flagship said. "Grand Admiral, we've lost. We need to withdraw." "The Empire does not retreat," Han said, but his voice lacked conviction. He had commanded fleets for decades. He knew a lost battle when he saw one. But to retreat now would mean admitting that the Empire had been defeated by a single-planet species that had been spacefaring for barely 200 years. That's when the Terran fleet did something unexpected. They stopped attacking. The drones recalled. The weapons went silent. The human ships simply held their positions, waiting. Admiral 1 opened a channel again. Grand Admiral Han, we're giving you one final chance. Leave now. Return to Imperial space. Tell your leaders that humanity will not be conquered. We're showing mercy because you were following orders, because you didn't know what you were facing. But if you continue this fight, we will use weapons we've been holding in reserve. Weapons we developed during our darkest hours. Weapons so terrible we swore never to use them unless absolutely necessary. What weapons? Han asked despite himself. Weapons that make the entropy accelerators look gentle, one said. Devices that can prevent matter from maintaining atomic bonds, turning anything they touch into a cloud of individual atoms. Consciousness disruptors that can unravel sapient thought, leaving minds intact but unable to process information. Reality anchors that can freeze objects in spacetime, making them immune to any change but also unable to move or act. He paused, letting the words sink in. We built these weapons to use against each other, Grand Admiral. During our civil wars, we created horrors that we hoped never to unleash. You're forcing our hand. Leave now or discover what humanity becomes when it stops being merciful. Han looked at his remaining ships, 20 dreadnoughts out of 30, hundreds of support ships damaged or destroyed, the neutralized. His fleet had been torn apart by a force he didn't understand using weapons he couldn't counter. And the humans claimed they had even worse weapons still unused. Send the recall signal, Han said quietly. All ships retreat to the outer system. We're leaving. Grand Admiral, his tactical officer asked, uncertain. We're leaving, Han repeated louder this time. Send a message to Central Command. Tell them we need diplomats, not more warships. Tell them that humanity is not a primitive species. There's something else, something new. The executor fleet began its withdrawal, moving slowly at first, then faster as the crews realized they were being allowed to leave. They passed beyond Jupiter, beyond Saturn, back toward the edge of the system where they could safely jump to faster-than-light travel. On the Indomitable, Captain watched them go. Should we pursue? Make sure they actually leave. No need, one said. They'll leave, and they'll send word back to their empire, word about what happened here. Will the empire send more fleets? Asked. One shook his head. I don't think so, not after this. They've lost their air of invincibility. 3,000 years of never losing a war ended by a species they thought were primitives. No, they'll send diplomats next. They'll want to understand what happened. They'll want to make peace. And if they don't, pressed. One smile faded, replaced by something colder and harder. Then we'll finish what we started here. We'll show them the weapons we kept in reserve. We'll demonstrate what humanity built during our darkest hours. We spent 200 years developing ways to kill each other. If the Empire forces us to, we'll show them just how good we became at it. In the underground laboratory, Engineer powered down the weapon systems. Around him, his team worked to secure the most dangerous devices, the ones that had not been used. The reality anchors, the consciousness disruptors, the atomic. All the horrors that humanity had created in its drive to make better weapons than its enemies. Do you think we'll ever need to use these? A young engineer asked, looking at the sealed containers holding humanity's most terrible secrets. Thought about the question. I hope not. I truly hope not, but if we do, he looked at the containers, at the weapons that could unmake reality itself. If we do, then whoever forces us to use them will learn why humanity survived its own self-destructive nature. We're good at destruction, better than any species should be, and if pushed far enough, we'll show the galaxy just how good we are. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel and vanished from the Sol system. Behind them, they left the wreckage of their pride and the knowledge that the galaxy had changed. Humanity had arrived, and they were not the primitives that everyone had expected. They were something far more dangerous. 3 weeks after the battle, a single ship arrived at the edge of the Sol system. It was small compared to the warships that had come before, sleek and elegant rather than bristling with weapons. It broadcast peaceful intentions on all frequencies and requested permission to approach Earth. Admiral 1, still commanding the Indomitable from its position near the moon, received the message and smiled. The same small smile he had worn throughout the entire conflict. Grant them permission. Send an escort to guide them in. It seems the Empire has decided to talk instead of fight. The ship was escorted to a neutral station that humanity had built in orbit around Earth. It was new, constructed specifically for meetings like this. A place where species could meet as equals, not as conquerors and conquered. Diplomats stood in the station's main conference room, looking out at Earth through the large viewing window. She was young for such an important role, barely 30 years old, but she had trained her entire life for diplomatic work. The Terran government had known for years that first contact with alien species was inevitable. They had prepared accordingly. Behind her, the door opened. She turned to see the delegation enter. 3 of them, led by a tall whose scales were decorated with symbols of high rank. Not military medals, though. These were diplomatic markings. "I am Imperial Chancellor," the lead said. His translator rendered his words into perfect English. "I speak with the full authority of the Galactic Empire." "I am speaking for the people of Earth and humanity," replied. She gestured to the table. "Please sit, we have much to discuss." They sat across from each other, human and alien, conqueror and defiant defender. For a long moment neither spoke, then leaned forward, his yellow eyes studying intently. "How?" he asked simply. Grand Admiral Hand's report was, "Difficult to believe. Your technology, your weapons, your tactics. You've been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. We've had interstellar travel for 3. Yet you defeated our greatest fleet using weapons we can barely understand. How?" Smiled, that same smile that every human who knew the truth wore, the smile that had so puzzled them during the battle. "You want the truth, the real answer." "Please," said. Stood and walked to the viewing window, looking down at Earth. "Tell me, Chancellor, how many wars has the Empire fought against species of equal or greater technological capability?" Considered the question. "None. Every species we encountered was either more primitive than us, or we were the first spacefaring civilization they met." "Exactly," said. "You won the lottery, Chancellor. You developed faster-than-light travel early. You spread across the stars before anyone else in your region of space. Every species you encountered was behind you technologically, so you conquered them. You absorbed them. You grew stronger." She turned to face him. "But here's the thing. Once you had that advantage, you never lost it. Why would you? Your weapons worked. Your tactics worked. You won every war, so you stopped pushing. You stopped innovating. Why develop new weapons when the old ones always won? Why create new tactics when the standard approach always succeeded?" Said nothing, but his expression showed he understood. "Humanity didn't have that luxury," continued. She brought up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Wars, conflicts, battles stretching back thousands of years. We've been fighting each other since we learned to pick up sticks. Nation against nation. Tribe against tribe. Corporation against corporation. We never stopped competing. We never had the chance to grow complacent. The display shifted to show more recent conflicts, the corporate wars, the outer system battles, conflicts fought with weapons that bent physics itself. For 200 years, we've been confined to one star system. We couldn't expand outward, so we competed inward. Every nation wanted better weapons than its enemies. Every corporation wanted better technology than its competitors. Every scientist wanted to surpass their rivals. We developed gravitational manipulation, not for defense against aliens, but to protect our habitats from collision during the corporate wars. We created the eraser because we needed a weapon that could remove enemy installations without leaving debris that might hit other structures. The drones. We built those because too many human pilots were dying in battles between Earth and the Mars colonies. She paused, letting her words sink in. Every weapon we used against your fleet, Chancellor, was originally designed to kill other humans. We spent 2 centuries in an arms race with ourselves, developing horrors we hoped never to use. When your fleet arrived, we simply pointed those weapons outward for the first time. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "The weapons you mentioned during the battle, the reality anchors, the consciousness disruptors, the atomic, were those real?" "Yes," said quietly. "All real, all functional, all terrible. We developed them during our darkest conflicts and then sealed them away when we realized how dangerous they were. Too dangerous to use even against ourselves." "But you would have used them against us." "If you had forced us to, yes." The expression was serious now, the smile gone. "We gave you multiple warnings, multiple chances to leave. If you had continued, if you had threatened our home world with extinction, then yes, we would have used every weapon in our arsenal, even the ones that terrify us." Process this information. His species had conquered 43 worlds. They had wiped out species that refused to surrender. They had considered themselves the apex of galactic civilization. And now he was learning that a single planet species had surpassed them simply because that species had spent centuries trying to destroy itself. He said, "What happened to it? Where did you send the singularity?" Pulled up another display. "We created a pocket dimension, a bubble of spacetime separated from our own universe. The singularity is there, perfectly stable, perfectly safe. It's not a threat to anyone. We could return it to you if you wanted, but I wouldn't recommend it. That weapon is too dangerous, Chancellor, even for defensive purposes." "You could have destroyed our entire fleet," said. "When we retreated, you let us go. Why? If you wanted to send a message to the Empire, wiping us out completely would have been very clear." "Because we're not monsters," said. "We've fought wars for thousands of years. We know what war does to people, to civilizations. We didn't want to fight you at all. We just wanted you to leave us alone. When you refused, we defended ourselves. But we never wanted to exterminate you. That's not who we are." She sat down across from him again. "Here's what I think happened, Chancellor. Your empire grew powerful early. You conquered worlds and absorbed species, but you did it too easily. You never faced a real challenge, a real threat. You never needed to push your technology to its limits. You became strong, but you stopped growing stronger. Humanity, we couldn't stop growing. We were trapped in one system with limited resources and unlimited ambition. We had to innovate or die. We had to develop new technologies or be conquered by other humans. We never had the luxury of stopping, of saying, 'This is good enough.'" Understood, it was a bitter lesson but clear. "So what happens now? Will you conquer us, take revenge for our attack?" Smiled again, but this time it was warmer, more genuine. "No, we're offering you a partnership. The Terran Commonwealth is open to all species who want to join as equals. You teach us about the galaxy, about the species you know, about the politics and history beyond our system. We'll share our technology, help you advance. Together, we can explore what's beyond your empire's borders." "And if we refuse?" "Then we go our separate ways," said. "We won't attack you, we won't invade your space, but we will defend ourselves if threatened again. And Chancellor, the next time won't be as gentle. Next time we'll use the weapons we kept in reserve, the ones that frighten us." Looked at his aides, then back at. "You're offering us a choice. Join you as equals or leave you alone. That's more than we've ever offered any species we encountered." "Because we know what it's like to be on both sides," said. "We've been conquerors and conquered, oppressors and oppressed. We've learned from our mistakes. We're hoping you can too." The Chancellor stood. "I need to consult with the Empire. This decision is too important for me to make alone, but I will recommend that we accept your offer. The Empire has never been defeated before. Perhaps it's time we learned what it means to be equals rather than rulers." He paused at the door. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course," said. "Throughout this entire encounter, every human we've dealt with has worn that smile. That amused smile as if our threats were funny. Why? What's so amusing about facing annihilation? Smile returned, soft and knowing. It's not amusement, Chancellor. It's relief. For thousands of years, humanity's greatest enemy has been itself. We've fought wars that nearly destroyed our species multiple times. We've created weapons that could sterilize our own planet. We've stood on the brink of extinction by our own hands more times than I can count. When your fleet arrived, when you threatened us with destruction, do you know what humanity felt? Relief. Finally, an external enemy. Finally, a threat we could all agree on. Finally, a reason to point our weapons at someone other than ourselves. She looked out at Earth again. We smile because facing your empire, facing your fleet, facing extinction from an alien force, it's almost relaxing compared to fighting ourselves. You threaten to destroy humanity. We've been threatening to destroy ourselves for. Compared to that constant, gnawing fear that we might end our own species, your threat was almost manageable. Stared at her, trying to understand. You mean you smile because you're more afraid of yourselves than you are of us? Yes, said simply. We know what we're capable of, Chancellor. We know the horrors we can create, the destruction we can unleash. We've seen it in our history over and over. Your empire, you're dangerous, yes, powerful, but you're also predictable, understandable. We can defend against you. Ourselves, though, we never know when we might turn on each other again, when the next war might start, when someone might decide to use the weapons we've locked away. That's what keeps us up at night, not alien empires, ourselves. The Chancellor nodded slowly. You're telling me that humanity is more terrified of its own potential for destruction than it is of any external threat. Exactly, said. So when you showed up with your ultimatum, your weapons, your threats, we smiled because finally, for once, we weren't fighting ourselves. We had a common enemy, something we could all agree was bad. It was almost a relief. Looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that was surprisingly similar to human laughter. You're saying that the most dangerous species we've ever encountered is dangerous primarily to itself. Yes, said, smiling wider. Welcome to humanity, Chancellor. We're a mess, but we're a very well-armed mess. And now that we have someone else to focus our energy on, we're actually kind of excited about it. The negotiations took 3 days. In the end, the Empire agreed to join the Terran Commonwealth as an equal partner. They would share their knowledge of the galaxy, introduce humanity to other species, and help navigate the complex politics of interstellar civilization. In return, humanity would share their advanced technology and help the Empire develop new innovations. On the final day, as the treaty was signed, Admiral One stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the ceremony through a video feed. Captain stood beside him. We won, she said quietly. We actually won. We survived, One corrected. Winning would imply there was ever any doubt. He smiled that familiar smile. They never had a chance, not against a species that's been preparing to fight itself for. What happens now? She asked. Now we explore the galaxy. We meet new species. We learn about the universe beyond our system. And hopefully, he added, hopefully we can keep pointing our weapons outward instead of inward. Maybe having common goals will help us stay united. And if it doesn't? One smile faded slightly. Then we'll have shown the galaxy exactly how dangerous humanity can be, and they'll do everything they can to make sure we stay united. Fear of what we might do to them will keep us focused on external matters rather than internal conflicts. Down on Earth, engineers sealed the final container holding humanity's most terrible weapons. The reality anchors, the consciousness disruptors, the atomic. All the horrors that humanity had created and then feared to use. Maybe we won't need these anymore, he said to his team, echoing words he'd said before. One of the younger engineers looked at him. Do you really believe that? Thought about it, about human history, about the wars they'd fought, about the weapons they'd created. about the drive to compete, to innovate, to surpass. No, he admitted finally. We'll probably create even worse weapons eventually. That's what we do. We push boundaries, we explore possibilities, we develop things that should never exist. But maybe, he continued, maybe having other species around will change us. Maybe having friends and allies and partners in the galaxy will give us something better to focus on than destroying each other. Maybe we can channel our drive for innovation into peaceful purposes. And if we can't, looked at the sealed containers, then the galaxy will learn what humanity is truly capable of, and they'll make sure we never have a reason to use these weapons. Fear keeps people honest, after all. And if there's one thing we've taught the Empire, it's that humanity is something to be feared. The young engineer nodded. So we smile because we won. No, said, smiling that same knowing smile. We smile because we survived our greatest enemy, ourselves. Everything else is easy by comparison. Above, in orbit, the delegation departed in their ship, carrying news of the treaty back to Imperial space. They would tell their leaders about humanity, about the weapons, about the technology, about the terrifying realization that a species confined to one star system had surpassed an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. And they would recommend strongly that the empire never threaten humanity again, because the weapons they had seen were bad enough. The weapons humanity had kept in reserve were worse. And the worst part, humanity would keep developing new weapons, new technologies, new ways to defend themselves. Because that's what humanity did. They innovated, they competed, they pushed boundaries, and now, for the first time in their history, they could point all that creative destruction outward instead of inward. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity would smile, that knowing, slightly amused smile, because they finally had something else to focus on besides destroying themselves. It was, in its own strange way, a relief.